This video is about technical analysis of USD RUB, which is also known as the Russian Ruble. And we have the monthly chart open, and on this chart we can see that we had this movement over here, and it's been a very strong bearish movement. To add to this, we had also had an overextended M structure at that point, which had a neckline at that point, and we can see that this level over here was the first leg of that M structure, and this was the second leg with the neckline being at that level more or less. And you guys know that whenever we have these formations, we want to see price break into the bottom side of that neckline and then heading back up to that neckline to give it a test. And generally speaking, at that neckline is where we look for those potential selling opportunities. So in regards to this M structure over here, which is an overextended M structure, we can see that price had broken to the bottom side of that neckline and then went back up to the neckline to test it. And on these smaller time frames around the neckline is where we should have looked for potential selling opportunities, right? Another thing that is also very much interesting is that at this point in time we can see that the market is at a very strong level of support, and also in fact we could say that if you look at this candlestick over here, which is a bearish candlestick, it had actually closed below this level over here, and this indicates that there's quite a chance that we might potentially see the market move further down and at least to around this level over here, right? So what I'm going to do right now is just add a neckline for that overextended M structure. Just bear with me while I do so. So we could say more or less that the neckline of that overextended M structure is at this point, and as I said to you guys, we saw price coming back to the neckline to test it, and at that point is where we should have looked for potential selling opportunities. I also want to add the support area, and here we go over here. And to add to this, I also want to mention that because we had a W structure over here, remember that whenever it comes to these W structures, what happens a lot is that traders and investors usually buy on that second leg of that M structure and they place their stop losses just below. So this entire move over here could well be a stop hunt, in my humble opinion, over and above it being this overextended M structure over here, right? So in other words, there was a lot of money stuck at this level over here, and in my humble opinion, the market needed to come back to grab that liquidity over there, as liquidity is money that needs to be tracked, or rather grabbed by the market at one point or another. So what else do we see in regards to the monthly chart of USD RUB at this point in time? As I said, guys, we can see at this point in time that this very strong level of support has been violated, and we actually saw the market closing below that area. And what this says to me is that chances are that we may potentially see the market actually move further down and at least to around this level over here, because there is the next strong support area. I'm just gonna mark that level for now. There we go, there we go, there we go, there we go, there we go. So from here, what I'm gonna do, guys, is head down to the weekly chart, and let's have a look in terms of what's happening on the weekly chart. And just to recap, remember on the monthly chart we spoke about how we have this overextended M structure, with the side being the first leg and the side being the second leg of that M structure, and the neckline being at that level. As I said, we saw the market closing to the bottom side of that neckline, heading back up to the neckline to test it, and at this point is where I said we should have looked for potential selling opportunities, right? Anyway, now that we're on the weekly chart, let's have a look in terms of what's going on this particular chart. On the weekly chart, the first thing that I can see that is also very much important is the fact that we have a gap at that level, we have another gap at this level, and then at this level over here, if I can just mark it properly, right? And what these gaps represent is liquidity, and they tell us that at these points there's a lot of money stuck there, and at some point we will see the market head up to grab all of those liquidity points, right? Another thing that I see in regards to the weekly chart is that, as much as I mentioned to you guys that we had this M structure over here which has a neckline at that point, and at this point is where we should have looked for potential selling opportunities. Remember, I also mentioned that at this point in time the market is actually at a very strong level of support, and in fact I said to you guys that the market actually closed below this level of support, and chances are that we may see the market actually move further down to around this level over here. As much as that's the case, I want you guys to look at this area over here, right? What's happening in this area is that we have especially on the lower time frames. It's not really visible on the weekly time frame, but on the lower time frames we may find that we have what seems to be an inverted head and shoulders pattern forming there. And I believe that once we get a confirmation at this point, chances are that we may potentially see the market from where it is actually head up to around this level to retest this very strong level of resistance, which is also, as I said earlier, the neckline of this overextended structure. I hope you guys can see that, right? Anyway, from here, what I'm going to do is head down to the daily chart. However, before I do so, just remember or keep in mind that we have all of those points where we have a lot of liquidity stuck, and I said to you guys that in the future we will see the market actually head up to those areas to grab that liquidity. Just also bear in mind that I spoke about how we could potentially have an inverted head and shoulders pattern at that point, and potentially this pattern may give us the momentum that we need for price to head up to grab all of those liquidity points in the future. And I just also want to stress that what I'm doing at this point in time is just speculating, and I'm not necessarily saying that the markets will unravel in the manner in which I've just described. I'm just showing you at the end of the day what could happen in as far as the USD RUB is concerned, which is also known as the Russian Ruble. Anyway, let's head down to the daily chart, and here we are on the daily chart. Let's have a look. Remember, on the weekly chart I spoke about how we could potentially have an inverted head and shoulders pattern at that level or at that point, and as much as that's the case, we can see that the current daily candle is still very much bearish, and I believe that should it close around this level over here, and we also have the formation of a bullish daily candle that also closes bullish, there is a chance that we may potentially see, as I said, the market actually give us this inverted head and shoulders pattern and continue to move up to grab all of those liquidity points that I spoke about earlier, right? Just also note that if it does happen that we do get this pattern over here, the neckline will be more or less at that point, and the safest entry, in my humble opinion, or the safest thing to do is to rather wait for the market to close above that neckline of that inverted head and shoulders pattern, and then wait for the market again to head back to the neckline to test it. And at this point is where I believe that we should look for those potential buying opportunities, and that's when I believe we may potentially see the market head up to grab all of those liquidity points, right? Anyway, what else do we see on the daily chart that we should be paying attention to? In fact, before we continue, I just want to add my daily channel as well. Just bear with me. There we go. And just remember that we just need to ensure that whatever drawings that we do add to our charts are as close to perfection as possible, just to ensure that ultimately when we do execute, our execution is also accurate, right? So there we go. We could say that that's a daily channel, and in regards to the daily channel, we can see that we are in a downward trending market. And just remember, guys, earlier I spoke about, if I can just zoom out a bit, the fact that at this point in time over here we have price actually, or rather we had price actually closing below that very strong level of support, and then went up again. And I said to you guys that we may also see the market actually continue to move further down to continue with the downtrend, right? Anyway, let's zoom in and see what else is happening in regards to the daily chart. On the daily chart, I can see that we have another overextended W structure over here, which also has a neckline at that point, and we can see that the market actually went, or rather closed above that neckline. And what may possibly happen is we may see the market again head down to this level, which is where we have the neckline of that W structure, and which is also a very strong level of support at this point in time. And at this point we may potentially look for those buying opportunities, right? So what I want to do now is just add a neckline for that W structure. It's also actually an overextended W structure because that first leg is much higher than that second leg, right? Anyway, we could say more or less that our neckline is at that point, and then the next thing that I'm going to do, guys, is to utilize the Fibonacci retracement tool just to see if that neckline of that W structure actually aligns with any key numbers that we have on the tool. Let's have a look. Just bear with me. Right, so we can see actually that the neckline doesn't really align with any key numbers that we have on the tool, because the most important numbers are the 61.8%, as well as the 50% Fibonacci retracement levels. Nonetheless, should price come back to this level, we know that that's where we have the neckline of this W structure, and indeed at this point is where I believe we should be looking for those potential buying opportunities. We're not just gonna buy, we're gonna look for potential buying opportunities, right? Anyway, what else do we see on this chart, which is the daily chart? Another thing that I see that is also very much important is the fact that we have a gap over here, and that represents liquidity, and you know that liquidity is money, and that the markets will always go to where the money is located, right? Anyway, let's from here head down to the H4 chart. However, before I do so, I just also want to point out that we also have an opposing structure in the form of another overextended M structure over here, which has a neckline over there. And what may possibly also happen is we might see the market actually move further up to just test the neckline of this M structure, as well as to test this trend line, and then we may see the market actually move further down to around this level, which is the next very important support level, right? So what we're doing, guys, at this stage is looking at the market in its entirety and looking for opportunities in as far as buying or selling goes. So we could say that the neckline of this overextended M structure is more or less at that point. And just remember that necklines are not lines, they are areas. Necklines are not lines, they are areas. I'm just adding lines just for the sake of making sure that our charts are as clean as possible to avoid any confusion. But just remember, I spoke about how we have this overextended W structure, which has a neckline at that point, and I also spoke about how we have this overextended M structure, which has a neckline at that point, right? And I said to you guys that as much as at this point I'm saying that we should be looking for potential buying opportunities, just bear in mind that even if we do buy at this point, it may happen that the market hits to this level, and at that level the market moves further down. So remember, at the end of the day, the USD RUB chart is very much choppy, not choppy, but rather all over the show. It's very mixed. Anything can happen, so we just need to make sure that we are ready for whatever moves that come along. So from here, I'm just going to head down to the H4 chart. Just bear with me. Let's see. On the H4 chart, I'm just going to fix my drawings more or less, as we need to ensure that ultimately whatever drawings that we add to our charts are as close to perfection as possible. And here we are. What do we see on the H4 chart? And just to recap, remember on the daily chart we spoke about how we have this overextended W structure with a neckline over there. We also spoke about how we have this overextended M structure, which also has a neckline over there. And I said to you guys that at this point we should potentially be looking for those buying opportunities, as the anticipation is for the market, after having, closed above the neckline, to come back to the neckline, and at the neckline is where we may look for potential buying opportunities. Nonetheless, as I said, right, even if we do buy at this point, we may find that at this point the market actually moves further down because we have this M structure and this neckline at that level as well. So what I'm going to do right now actually is just to see if this neckline actually aligns with any key numbers on the Fibonacci retracement tool. Let's see, Fibonacci. Let's have a look. So we can see that in regards to the Fibonacci retracement tool, the neckline of this overextended M structure doesn't really align with any key numbers, right? So we can just delete that tool, right? So that is it in as far as my analysis goes. At this point in time, I don't see any buying or selling opportunities. However, I believe that this level over here, which is a very strong level of support, as well as the neckline of this W structure, is a very good area to be looking for potential buying opportunities. And this level over here, right, should the market from here head to this level, we will then evaluate and see if we can find any further selling opportunities.